A little while back, I took a chance and did a tier ranking video of every single Disney animated film that was theatrically released, between Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs up to Frozen 2. The response to that video was actually pretty amazing. I didn't know what to expect with that one, so I really want to thank you for showing up to that video, leaving your comments, leaving your thoughts on what I did right or wrong, how you would rank those movies, and the discussion was really fun. So I thought I would do something again, something I'm really passionate about, although I will say not nearly as knowledgeable about, which is Marvel superheroes and the MCU. So I decided to rank every single canon MCU piece of media so far. That's going from Iron Man, the very first MCU film, all the way up to What If, the animated series that's on Disney+. There are quite a few things that are not on the list because Marvel and Disney no longer consider them canon. That includes Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or any of the Netflix shows. That being said, I know I'm still going to get comments asking me why Daredevil isn't on the list, or why Agent Carter or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. isn't on the list, or why the Hulk movie from the early 2000s isn't there, but so be it. That being said, let's jump over to the computer and jump into this. I'm really excited to get my thoughts out. So a couple of things here before I get underway with this tier system. First and foremost, in the last tier ranking that I did, a couple of people acknowledged the fact that not everything was in order from like when it was released chronologically. So this time around, I have set up all of the movies chronologically from Iron Man to the What If series. These are movies and TV shows. So I'm going to go through them chronologically as they came out, not as they happen within the timeline, but just as they came out. It just makes it easier for me to see that, and hopefully easier for you to understand what I'm doing. And I have not actually looked at this and thought about this at all, so you're going to hear my thoughts in real time. So yeah, let's get started with this. And Iron Man seems kind of like the same as a Toy Story or a Snow White, in the sense that its beginnings, the reason for the entire MCU comes from it, so it has to be top tier, S tier. It just makes sense. It makes sense that it has to be S tier. Maybe some other things come ahead of it, but I feel like it just has to sit there. And I feel like Iron Man will sit pretty high up on the list in general anyways, considering its importance to the MCU as a whole. The Hulk, though, not the Hulk, the Incredible Hulk. And the Hulk is not on here, and a couple of other things are not on here. MCU shows from Netflix, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Agent Carter, and a couple other things aren't here because as of right now, Marvel has said that they're not canon, so I'm not putting them in as canon. I would love to rank some of the Netflix shows and whatnot, but I'm just going with what Marvel says is canon. And the Incredible Hulk is so insignificant you do not need to watch it, and so it fails. It's in the F tier. Yeah, I'm going with that. It's F tier. You don't need to see it. The actor, Edward Norton, that played the Hulk, that played Bruce Banner, was switched out and changed. And overall, like, nothing of importance to the rest of the MCU timeline really comes from it. So I'm going with that. Iron Man 2 gets a lot of grief. However, it does introduce Black Widow as a character. So it's not an F tier film. I don't even think it's a D tier film. I think it's a very passable, watchable film. Enjoyable. I'm going to go with C tier. This might change. I would go B or C, but I'm going to stick with C tier. I think that it's one of those movies that has some important roles to it, but you didn't really need to watch it to understand everything. If you didn't realize that Black Widow didn't come into the MCU until Avengers, you'd be fine. Like, there's nothing that really, matters to that. But she's introduced in that film. Thor probably, because it introduces the character, it introduces Asgard, Loki, all these other people, it has to go a bit higher, but Thor is not really anyone's favorite, I don't think, especially not out of the Thor films. I'm going to put it with a B tier. It feels like it's important enough that, like, if nothing of note really happened in it, it might go lower. But because it introduces us to Asgard and kind of the world of Thor, it has to go high. Also, like, I think one of the funniest, best moments in the MCU happens in it when he throws down the coffee mug. So I'm going with that. Captain America, the first Avenger. I'm a sucker for period pieces, and my personal opinion is that this is a top tier film. But I kind of feel like the consensus of the crowd is that it's not everyone's cup of tea. It introduces us to Steve and Bucky. Ultimately, I want to say it's A tier. I want to say it's really, really good. But it's not completely top tier S tier. That's really hard for me because I would probably put it in S tier. In fact, I think I'm gonna put it in S tier. I love Captain America, the First Avenger. It introduces us to characters. The period piece is fun. Nazis, Hydra. It sets up a lot. I think of these kind of films I've already put out, Iron Man and Captain America set up the most stuff. Even though Thor introduces us to a world, I think that, yeah, I'm gonna go with it. Because I think they're really good films and they set stuff up. Thor is not an amazingly good film, but does set stuff up. Avengers, this is gonna get some real heat. I know it. I know people are gonna be mad at me. And I think that it sets up some really good stuff. Is it important enough to be S tier? Because I want to put it in A tier. That's my thought process. My thought process is that it's really good, and it does set up a lot of things, but I don't feel like it's as good as the original Iron Man or Captain America. But I feel its overall importance. It's some of the shots, the quotes. It is iconic enough. I think it has to go in S tier, probably behind Iron Man. I'm going with it. I wanted to put it in A tier, really, really badly. Iron Man 3 is also going to be one that's going to have a lot of people mad at me because I think it's an A tier film. I think the trilogy of Iron Man is the best of all of the trilogies of characters here. And Iron Man 3, for a lot of people, I don't think that they know this, and the reason why Robert Downey Jr. ended up in Iron Man in the first place is because of his role in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which was written by Shane Black, and Shane Black directs Iron Man 3. And I feel like it feels like a Shane Black film. It feels like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which if you've not seen that film, you should. It's super fun. But this film also shows the humanity more of Tony Stark. And I feel like without Iron Man 3, the eventual happenings to Tony Stark in Infinity War and Endgame don't hit nearly as hard. I feel like those humanity beats need to happen in Iron Man 3 to set up a lot of what happens to that character later. Thor Dark World, it's low. Is it F tier low? I think I'll put it on D tier for now. It's not as bad. Stuff happens. So more stuff happens than in the Incredible Hulk. But if you were gonna skip any of the Thor films, this is the one to skip. You don't really need it. So sitting on the D tier for now. That could change. That could change. I could move some of these things around. And I keep forgetting about it. Winter Soldier. A lot of people will say this is their favorite Captain America movie over First Avenger. It also does set up some interesting bits, but I don't know. I don't know if it's this is gonna make people mad, but I'm gonna put it on A tier, the first of A tier. It's ahead of Iron Man 3, but I think overall it is. It sets up a lot of great things, but I think that there are other things that have happened to Captain America that are even more impactful. And I know Hydra, Shield, Winter Soldier, Bucky, all those things. But there's something that just tells me that it's not S tier. And I think what makes Captain America the First Avenger S tier is the time and the setting. Putting it during World War II, it separates it a bit from the rest of the MCU, having kind of that period piece. This is what I think. Guardians of the Galaxy is S tier. This is high quality filmmaking, and for me, it's one of my favorites of the MCU. And I'm thinking it goes here. It sets up an entirely new cast and crew that do become important, and the film is extremely funny. It brought a lot more of that humor than anything else that came before it, as some of that humor has really stuck around. That MCU style humor has stuck around for almost all of the movies since. This was an amazing film when it first came out. It blew people away. So I'm putting it there. And again, I know people are going to say, you put this in front of The Winter Soldier, and yes, I have. Yes, I have. Age of Ultron. Stuff happens, but not exciting enough. A forgettable film. I'm going to put it actually ahead of Iron Man 2 in the C tier. It's fine. You can watch it. It's a passable film in the same way that Iron Man 2 is. There's a little bit more, there's some more iconic scenes in Ultron than there are in Iron Man 2. But it's not, I wouldn't sit down to watch that film, I don't think. Ant-Man. Ant-Man is probably, if Guardians of the Galaxy isn't my favorite, then Ant-Man is my favorite film in the MCU. It is not an S tier film, though. I recognize that. I recognize that, like, you don't necessarily need that film. It does set up a lot of things that end up happening in Endgame. The character itself is an interesting one. But ultimately, Paul Rudd and Ant-Man don't matter nearly as much as characters like Captain America, Iron Man, Spider-Man, Thor. So I'm gonna go with solid A tier. I'm gonna put it ahead of Iron Man 3. It goes here. That's why I'm sticking with that. This was just my opinion. I would move it S tier. Top tier, love Ant-Man. Top 2 or 3 MCU movies for me, for sure. Civil War is 100% S tier. The idea of the Sokovia Accords continues to be something that's talked about up to this point in time, like up till today. Its impact has been huge. The split within the Avengers and them having to come back together in Infinity War and Endgame meant a lot more because of Civil War. I think that this might be the most important one so far. I'm going S tier, top tier, number 1 as far as this goes. There might be more later as far as that, but I feel like it's the most important to all of these characters. The characters were already all established, and now we're seeing them deal with the real world repercussions, which is fascinating to watch. To me, the politics and the conversations around the Avengers is more interesting to me than the actual battles and fight scenes. So this film does that for me, but then the fight scenes and the battles and stuff are also just very well done, very iconic in this film. Doctor Strange. A lot of people also really love this one, and it's setting up a lot of stuff. I'm gonna go with it not being S tier. I think it's an A tier film. Where does it go on the timeline, though? I would probably put it ahead of Ant-Man and Iron Man 3. It's important, and it will continue to be important as we move forward with the world of magic as it was introduced. But I could see that ultimately Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness being a more important film than Doctor Strange, and could end up being an S-tier film. But that film hasn't come up yet, so we don't know. But I'm going to put it here. I think that that's a solid place for it. It's important. It sets things up. It isn't as great as far as the fight scenes. There's some really beautifully shot scenes, special effects in that film. Yeah, I'm going with A tier. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is also an A tier film. Could be an S tier film because I really love it, but I'm thinking A tier film because we didn't really need Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 other than to introduce like Mantis. You know, we could have gone straight from Guardians of the Galaxy to Avengers Infinity War and everybody would have been fine with that. So my feeling is that maybe it sits behind Doctor Strange, ahead of Ant-Man and Iron Man 3. I'll stick with that. It doesn't seem as important, but it's a really fun movie. And its ultimate funness outweighs anything else. Spider-Man Homecoming. Spider-Man Homecoming. I wanted to say Spider-Man No Way Home, but that hasn't come out yet. We don't even have a trailer for it. Spider-Man Homecoming has one of my favorite scenes of any of the MCU films. The car ride to Homecoming with him sitting in the back seat and the Vulture driving the car is one of the most brilliantly acted scenes I've ever seen in my life. I think that it deserves to be an A-tier film. Civil War, yes, introduced the character, but I do feel like we learn a lot about the relationship between him and Tony Stark in this film, which again sets up things later for Spider-Man. And I want to say that it's probably ahead of Iron Man 3. I'm going to put it behind Ant-Man. Very good film. Love this film. I would say Vulture is actually top 5 villains of all the MCU. This is a really solid placement. I feel good about this one. And I know people are going to hate me for it, but I feel good about it. Thor Ragnarok, if I was going to pick a Thor movie, this would be the movie that goes somewhere. It completely changed the Thor character for the better. It introduced Valkyrie as a character who I absolutely adore and love. Jeff Goldblum is in this film, who I absolutely adore and love. And Taika Waititi has really taken over the character and given his own space to it. So to me, this is an S-tier film, probably right behind everything so far. But it's definitely top tier, S-tier. Black Panther, also S-tier. Even though we were introduced to Black Panther before, this set up Wakanda, the importance of Wakanda. It set up an entire tribe. It was also like an mostly all-black cast, won Academy Awards. It's not just important to the MCU, but it's important to Hollywood and the filmmaking industry and film history. So in that regard, it has to go really high up. And I want to put it ahead of everything except for these 3 films. Civil War, we were introduced to the Black Panther, so that kind of fits as well. Iron Man's important because it's the first one. Avengers seems like it just has to be there. It has to be iconic. Black Panther goes ahead of everything else. Then we get to Avengers Infinity War. Avengers Infinity War, I actually feel, is the best Avengers film out of all of the ones that they get together. However, the importance of Civil War sets up Infinity War. So I want to say Infinity War ends up being ahead of Avengers. Did I have this right? Is this? Oh no, this is Endgame. I set this up wrong. This is Infinity War. Sorry, everybody. Sorry. This is Infinity War. I'm putting it here. Nothing. I think that it's the most important film to the climax of the story of the 2-parters. That means this has to go here. So, yeah, that matters a lot. Ant-Man and the Wasp. Again, love this movie. Love the Ant-Man character. One of my top favorites. But I would say that it's, because of its placement right behind Infinity War, it made it kind of suck. Like, the stakes were so much lower for Ant-Man and the Wasp. I love Ghost as a character, but again, this whole movie seems and feels kind of unforgettable, besides the point that it sets up what is going to happen in Avengers Endgame. I feel like this is, because it only sets that up, because it gives us another female lead with the Wasp, and it's a fun film, I'm going to put it here behind Thor and the B tier. That's where I'm going with it. Again, I know that there are people that probably are going to say it's F tier, or even D tier. Some people might put it behind Iron Man 2. I'm going to go here, B tier. Sticking with it, that's my thing. Captain Marvel introduced a brand new character, set up the background of several characters, actually. Took us back in time. Yes, it's a period piece, but it's like the 90s, so it's like barely a period piece. But the character is instrumental to a lot of things and will be going forward. I don't think it's S tier. I know it's a lot of people's favorites, and I know for some people it's like their least favorite, because Brie Larson ruined everything for them. But whatever, that doesn't matter to me. Captain Marvel feels important, not important enough to be ahead of Winter Soldier or Doctor Strange. It could end up being like here. But I think Ant-Man sets up more things than Captain Marvel does. And I think that I think that this matters more. The Tony Peter Parker friendship matters more than the arrival of Captain Marvel. So it's sitting here on the A tier, right behind those things. Avengers Endgame is important, very much important. The death of Tony Stark, Steve leaving the Captain America mantle behind and passing it on. It is a very good film. It's definitely not as good as Infinity War. I don't even think that I think it's personally better than Avengers, but I don't think it's as important as Avengers. I'm going to put it behind Black Panther, and I want to think that it might even be less important than Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm going to go here. Again, controversial probably for a lot of people. A lot of people are probably yelling at me. Please leave your comments. Leave your comments below on why you think I was right or wrong. I would love to know. This is a difficult one for me. Outside of like animation and Walt Disney animation, Pixar animation, I'm not nearly as prolific with Marvel, other than knowing, watching and enjoying the movies. I've done some research, but I have not been like a huge comic book reader my entire life or anything like that, so this is much less informed than the Walt Disney Animation video tier list. But I'm interested to know what you guys think. Spider-Man Far From Home, I think it's important to the character of Peter Parker. It lets us know that he can live on without Tony Stark, and that he becomes a much better, well-rounded person and character. But I don't think it's as important as Homecoming. And in fact, I don't think it's nearly as important as Captain Marvel or Iron Man 3. I think it's a good B-tier film that goes ahead of Thor, and I think it goes behind Thor. It goes here. Again, this is not anything bad against the movie, and I love this movie, and saying that it's a B instead of an A or A+, is not bad. Like, any of these movies, I think C and above are not bad films. D and F, you could probably make that justification, but all of these are good films. I'm just kind of putting them in order of how I would watch them, or how I would just kind of rank them. But these are Iron Man 2 all the way up to Civil War so far have been really good films. WandaVision is setting up what's coming ahead. I think that this was a fantastic show. I'm a huge fan of old sitcoms and television history in general, so this hit that with me. It was an extremely emotional show. It made Wanda and Vision, I think, some of the best characters in the MCU. How important is it, and where does it rank? To me, it is an S tier or A tier show, and I'm veering towards A tier, and it's probably high up on the A tier, and I want to say it's probably behind Doctor Strange. Here's my reasoning for it. I think that it sets up a lot of things with these characters, but it doesn't set up a larger universal thing. And I'll talk about that in a minute here. I think that Doctor Strange sets up larger universal ideas with magic and introducing magic. Something that WandaVision has, and it expands upon it, but WandaVision doesn't necessarily introduce it. And then Captain America, Winter Soldier, really sets apart those characters and they're very much grounded in reality. It makes the MCU approachable and understandable because it is kind of within our reality. It also changes the dynamics of S.H.I.E.L.D. And it's probably some of the best fight sequences in the MCU, and it gave us, even though Bucky came first in First Avenger, Winter Soldier introduced Bucky as the Winter Soldier, who I think has been an extremely interesting character throughout the entire run. And that's kind of why WandaVision ends up back a few from that. And I absolutely love that show. But I think it's important sits in A tier and not anywhere above those. Falcon and the Winter Soldier might also be in a similar situation. It does give us a lot of that groundwork that the Winter Soldier does. It gives us these ideas of racism and what Sam Wilson will have to face as the new Captain America. Ultimately, I feel like the Sam Wilson story will have more important beats in the future, as will Bucky Barnes. And Bucky may have even had his most impactful moments previously or in this show. But I feel like it's less important than WandaVision. To me, Guardians of the Galaxy is super fun. I gotta stick with that. Ant-Man's probably more important. I would say that Homecoming is more important. So I'm gonna put it at A tier. I'm gonna put it in front of Captain Marvel. Even that seems like I'm doing a disservice to Captain Marvel, because I feel like there's something there. I could probably switch these. Again, I hear people talking to me in the comments, like, how can you do that to Falcon Winter Soldier? It's A tier, it's top tier. It's great. Here's the show that I think, unlike WandaVision is great, and I think WandaVision's my favorite of all of the Disney Plus MCU shows so far. But Loki changes everything, and it's become so important. The character evolves. They introduce whole new places, and then now they're introducing the multiverse, which matters so much going forward. And it'll have such a high impact going forward that I feel like it actually goes higher than a lot of the things on the S tier. And I want to say that it's probably here. It's either right behind or right ahead of Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm going to put it behind it for now. I think that it will continue to evolve and maybe even rank higher later as time goes on with how it's important. It is kind of like how Iron Man introduced to the MCU. Loki is now introducing the next phase of the MCU in a much different way and exploring the multiverse. Black Widow is good. We didn't really need it. It's a film that you could take and enjoy, or you don't need it. The only thing that it does is it sets up Florence Pugh as the new Black Widow moving forward. I think it's probably B tier, and it might be ahead of Ant-Man and Wasp, but not by much. In fact, I would say Ant-Man and Wasp is probably more important now, but going ahead in the future for like the Young Avengers and other ideas like Armor Wars, Secret Wars, things like that. Yeah, Black Widow might be a little bit more important in the future. What if, the last thing here, I've only seen one episode. There are rumors that Captain Carter, who's in the first episode, will have a more important role in the MCU and might be in Multiverse of Madness. Although I don't see that character continuing into more films outside of Multiverse of Madness, so I don't feel like it's as important. I think it's a great introductory place for the multiverse, but in no way is extremely meaningful. So in that regard, I feel like it sits in the B tier, but I actually have more fun with it than a lot of other things, and I might put it ahead of everything but Thor. Yeah. So there you go. In the S tier, all the way down to F tier, I've got Captain America Civil War, Iron Man, Avengers Infinity War, Avengers, and Black Panther. Those are my top 5. Guardians of the Galaxy, Loki, Avengers Endgame, and Captain America the First Avenger. Those are the top 10. And Thor Ragnarok being there 11 in S tier. Another 10 in A tier. Captain America, The Winter Soldier, Doctor Strange, WandaVision, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Ant-Man, Spider-Man Homecoming, Captain Marvel, Falcon and Winter Soldier, Iron Man 3, Thor, and starting in the B tier, we got Thor, What If, Spider-Man Far From Home, Black Widow, and Ant-Man and the Wasp. And I didn't say this, but I think that with Far From Home, maybe the most important thing that happens in it is that, he takes off the mask. Like, more people know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. But ultimately, I don't think that matters as much as some of the other things that come before it. C tier, these are the films. C tier is probably, I would even say, some of the B tier. B tier and C tier are the films that you don't need to watch. You can watch them, they're fine. But ultimately, Thor, What If, Spider-Man Far From Home, Black Widow, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Avengers Age of Ultron, and Iron Man 2 are the movies that you don't necessarily need to sit down and watch. They're great additions, but they don't have nearly as important things happen in them. And I know that that's crazy because Ultron also gives us the introduction for Wanda. Quicksilver gives us Vision. And that way it might move up. I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to stick with where it's at. I think it has some important moments, but it's a poorly executed film. And then Thor: The Dark World is a film that I think you don't need to watch at all. But there are some things that happen in it that are important with characters that still exist in the MCU. And then The Incredible Hulk is the only F-tier film because you don't really need it. Even Disney Plus, I don't think has it. Like it's the one that you could nix right now from the MCU, and it wouldn't matter. No one would care, truthfully. So this is what I've got. Let me know your thoughts. Rank them down below if you'd like to. Tell me what I got right, what I got wrong. I'll answer along in the comments, and we can have a discussion about it. Keep it civil, keep it clean, and as always, my friends, until next time, thank you for watching, and keep moving forward.